Welcome back, everyone. I'm Bob Laliberte from theCUBE Research, joined by my colleague Zeus Kerravala from ZK Research, and we're excited to dive into the technology behind Fabrix.ai, the Agentic AI platform whose goal is to make autonomous operations a reality. Now, we just heard in the market trend session that enterprises are struggling to operationalize AI at scale. So this session shows how Fabrix.ai solves that challenge, turning AI readiness into measurable results.
Yeah, and we've got a couple great guests to do that with. We've got Raju Datla, CEO of Fabrix.ai, and Rached Blili, Distinguished Engineer for Fabrix.ai as well. And so over the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to explore the Fabrix.ai platform. We'll look at the fabric, guardrails, context engineering, and the data fabric, and also the MCP server, I believe, right? And finally, the automation fabric, and talk about the ecosystem, tie it all together. So we're going to have 2 live demos, each about 10 minutes long, to show these capabilities. So why don't we get going?
Yeah, and before we jump into the demos, Raju, I'd like to ask you a question. And if we could, maybe starting with the big picture, and that's, what is the AI fabric that's at the heart of Fabrix.ai, and how does it unify data, context, and automation across the enterprise?
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. So let me start with our company name, Fabrix.ai. It's a workplace for digital workers, or the agents. So when we talk about the AI fabric, let's start with, it's an environment for agents to thrive in a secure, reliable, and consistent manner. The AI fabric allows you to connect any cloud-based LLM, or it allows you to use on-premises GPU-based models. And it interoperates with all these different models. Now, some customers have concern about working with cloud-based model, about their data privacy and other challenges in that environment. What we provide is a feature, data protection feature, that allows that customer not to lose any sensitive data or compromised by the cloud-based models or some service in between. And also provide guardrails that ensures that agents don't hallucinate and don't do something beyond their designated role.
Yeah, so it sounds like your AI fabric actually provides both the control plane and context plane for agentic operations. And to me, both are required. And as far as I know, enterprises have never really had access to that before, right, to bring those 2 things together.
Absolutely, Zeus. That's correct. It provides both control plane and context plane. And it also ensures that there is a governance and visibility into everything that the agents are doing. It provides lifecycle management that ensures that you can build the agents, test and deploy, or roll back. It also provides built-in observability that ensures that you can monitor what the agents are doing, where they're succeeding, where they're failing, how much are they costing, right? So that you don't have the AI cost model suddenly, a pay-as-you-go model, suddenly it overruns of the cost.
Well, it sounds good, and it's great to talk about it, but even better, why don't we see it in action?
Okay, so welcome to this demonstration of the Fabrix.ai platform's AgentOps features. We'll break this demo down into the following categories. The first, we'll talk about usage, how agents are selected and invoked to help you accomplish tasks. Next, we'll talk about Lifecycle, how agents are created and configured at a high level. Third, we'll talk about Observability, how agents and related services are monitored and kept track of. All right, let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about usage. When you load the Fabrix.ai environment, you're most likely going to start at this Fabrix.ai agent catalog. The Fabrix.ai agent catalog is just a way for users to be able to be connected to the agents that can help them. You can see that the catalog itself is just a simple arrangement of agents in cards. They're kind of agent cards. And that's not an accident, because we use the same mechanism in order to publish and advertise the agents using ACP, or the agent-to-agent protocol. But this is the hub for connecting people to the agents that can help them do their work. So we've got these organized into categories. There's a favorites at the top. You can see some of my favorite agents here. But we've got AIOps. You can pretty much see a category for most of the major solution sets that Fabrix.ai offers our customers. But this AI agent catalog is meant to be extensible, and it's meant for you to be able to take any agents that you build within the platform and publish them to this catalog so that your users can access not only the agents built by Fabrix.ai, but the agents that you built leveraging Fabrix.ai's agentic platform. So for any given agent here, you might be able to say, okay, look, this is interesting, the CVE vulnerability agent. What's that all about? I can click on it, and it gives me a little bit more information. The agent is classified under several categories. You get a slightly more descriptive agent statement here. You can actually access the documentation for this agent. So if I click on it, I get access to the agent brochure that talks about it in greater detail. I can see any screenshots that are available of this agent in action, so I get a sense of what it looks like when I'm using it. If there's any instructional videos, you're able to watch them here, and you get some contact information for whoever's responsible for it. But possibly more interestingly is you have some actions that are available to you here. The key one is I want to interact with this agent. So if I click this button, it's going to launch me into the Fabio Copilot. And it's going to create a conversation session for me automatically with that persona selected. And I can just click start, and it even prompts me for a default prompt. I can either type something down here and start asking whatever question I want, or I can just click this button and it'll fill in the prompt for me, and I can just send my question. And that just kicks the agent off. So when the agent is running, you can see its persona over here. You can see the tools that it has access to. If I click here, you can see all the tools. In this case, it has access to some ServiceNow tools, some security ops tools, a few different other sets of tools so it can perform its job. And it also has access to prompt templates, which are specific instructions. You can kind of see the different types of tasks that this agent is actually able to handle. And it's going to load one of these prompt templates based on the question and the task that I put in front of it. So when I asked it, can you check this database for unprocessed CVEs? It went and tried to, it said, okay, well, let me see which prompt templates I have access to. And it got a list. It basically got this list. And based on that, the descriptions in that list, it selected one and it retrieved it. Okay, retrieves that prompt template. So it retrieved this template called New Security Vulnerability Assessment, which tells it exactly how to perform this particular security vulnerability assessment. And it's then able to start calling other tools and running all of the different tasks that it needs to run, including scraping information from the web or accessing the infrastructure directly or whatnot, and generating this particular report. All right. So that's basically how you can use agents, but there's another way that agents are often used, and that's basically non-interactively. And we call those agentic workflows. And you can see what that looks like for this particular agent. It basically looks like this, like a flow chart of different states that were very similar to what you might see in something like LangGraph. We have this here, and you can see recent runs of it. I can edit this. This is a completely dynamic graphical editor where I can actually insert entirely new tasks. I add them in and I can connect them. I can connect one to the other completely interactively. And then that sets me up. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. All right, so that's a really quick overview of how to use AI agents. Next, we're going to talk about Lifecycle. Okay, so when we talk about Lifecycle, we have to remember a few things, especially when it comes to agents. So at Fabrix, we consider an agent to be a large language model powered software system that has access to tools, can make decisions and judgments, and take action through the use of those tools. We need to have several things come together in order to take a simple chatbot and turn it into an AI agent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through some of these components. I'm going to have to talk about them and show you some of them before I explain them, but then I will come around and explain some of these concepts to you. So let's start with the unifying concept, the thing that makes an agent an agent inside the Fabrix platform. And that's something that we call the AI persona. In front of you right now is a single example of a persona called RCA. It is a persona that is responsible for doing root cause analysis. But what does it mean for it to be a persona? So let's take a quick look at it. Let's look at the details of what make up a persona. So it's got a name. It's got access to several large language models. This doesn't mean that it's going to use all of them. It just means that these are the ones that are available for it to use. Usually which large language model is actually used is going to be selected or configured at runtime. It also has a specific guardrail model, which is a model that's going to be responsible for handling safety and alignment when it comes to prompts that are sent to the large language model and responses that come back from it. It has access to a selection of tools. Here's a list of tools that this particular agent has access to. You can see it's quite an extensive list of tools. They're under different categories that we call tool sets, right? AIOps, config, common. I'll go over some of that a little bit later. Okay. And lastly, it has prompt templates, which I will talk about as well. But basically, it's a set of customized instructions for that particular agents. That's the persona. So as you saw, it contains several things. I think the key things that you have to remember is it defines the models that are available to the persona, to the agent. It defines the tools that are available to the agent, and it defines the prompt templates that are available to the agent. I'm going to focus first on prompt templates, and you can see them here under the MCP menu. A prompt template is a customized instruction that the agent loads semantically while it's in the process of dealing with a request. So you can think of it as a bookshelf that contains instruction binders, and based on the question that is coming to the agent looks to the left, looks on its bookshelf, and asks, do I have a manual that teaches me how to handle this particular kind of request specifically? Otherwise, the agent will try to respond from its general knowledge unless instructed not to do so. But it's nice to have specific instructions for how to do capacity planning, how to do vulnerability assessments, very specific instructions that only need to use context when they're needed. And that's what a prompt template is. Tool sets are gatherings of tools. In Fabrix.ai, this is actually a relatively simple thing to do because Fabrix.ai already has the automation fabric, which is an entire pillar of the Fabrix.ai platform, where we can design automations that interact with third-party systems or that process data. So designing tools for agents to use is usually just a matter of configuration. So you can actually see, for example, if I open up this particular tool set, you can see this SecOps tool. It has a few things like get vulnerability metadata, get processed CVE data. These are tools that the agent can call. A tool to set the state of a CVE in the database, very, very simple type of atomic operations, and they're all kind of defined in this YAML file. Defining tools in Fabrix.ai is actually quite simple, but in order to get an agent to work, you have to have tools. You have to give it access to tools. So you understand what you want to do with the agent, you've given it instructions on how to do it, and the tool sets is just a way that you give it the means to do the things that you've asked it to do. Now, lastly, what we found is that once you enable people to build agents easily on a platform, they start to proliferate. You start to get a lot of them, and you need to organize them. And so that's where the concept of projects come in. So when you log into the platform as a user, you'll have your own AI storyboard where you can see what's going on with your particular environment, but you have access to a feature called projects. And projects is just a way to group some of the resources that are available to any theoretical agent into specific projects. So for example, I have this production project, which is the one I was looking at before. And if you remember, when I looked under models, I was able to see that in this particular project, I have access to these models. Under tool sets, I have access to these tools. And if I look at the bottom here, you can see that I have 70 total tools. But if I go to maybe the staging project, okay, I have access to different models in staging, and I have access to different tools in staging. If I scroll to the bottom here, you'll see that I have 98 tools available to me in staging. So there's some experimental tools that are included in the staging project that are not included in the production project. And I need to promote that project from a development to a production project. And that has to be done by a administrator. So that's projects. And so in order to create an agent, there's several ways that you can do it. One is you can just go about it step by step and create tool sets, create prompt templates, assemble together into personas. And then once you've got a persona, you've got the bare minimum to be able to interact with the agent by launching the Copilot. And I can start a new conversation. I select one of the personas that I've defined. And you can see here that I have the project name followed by the persona name. So I can see I have some legacy, I have staging, I have production, I have several personas, and I could select one, right? I can select which model, and this list is based on the persona and the models that I gave access to that persona. And then I can start interacting with this particular agent. But the other thing that we can do is oftentimes agents are supposed to run independently and autonomously. So the way we do that is we go back to My AI and select our project, for example, our production project. And then under this menu here, you'll see agentic workflows. Now, this is a different mode in which agents run. Rather than interactive, these agents are meant to run in the background. So there's a little bit more to building these. So let's take, for example, this one. You can see that this agent is built inside of our drag and drop kind of interactive agent editor. It has a starting point, and it has several execution blocks. This one particular is an agentic execution block, and you can see that it has the prompt built in over here, and it has references to inline variables. And these inline variables are going to come from whatever the triggering event or triggering system is going to be for this agent. There's a support for these variables where the episode ID is provided at runtime by the user. Whereas the agent output is just something that's going to be passed later on to be able to keep track of what the output was. So there's a few, and there's all sorts of different things that you can introduce into these agentic workflows. Some steps deterministic, some steps using agents and LLMs in order to do some non-deterministic things. And you can drag and drop conditionals in here, decisions, and you can get pretty fancy here. But that's just the other way that you have of building agents. But you might not be interested in even doing that. And thankfully, what we have is we have an agent or two whose jobs are to help you create agents. So let me give you a quick demonstration of that. So here's an agent called the Agent Creator. It's it's something we created. We put it in a project called Agent Creator. It's called Agent Creator. And this is a past session that was run in the past, but I'll just show it to you just to save time. The request was simple. I want an agent that fetches metric data from Dynatrace and provides the detailed report. This is a really high-level query. It immediately gets to work loading up the right prompt template, understanding exactly what the instructions are for creating an agent. And it starts to gather requirements. Its instructions are, telling it to make an analysis of what it's going to take to fulfill this request. And it starts to say, well, look, actually, in order to do this, I would probably have to be able to do these things. Let me check the tools that I have available and see if I have those tools. In this case, it did not have those tools. So it says, would you like me to create these tools? It's already got a sense of which tools it would need. It looked for them. It didn't find them. And it offers the user to create the tools. If I click this button, it launches another session. I can click here and you can see the example of it. But I've already got that session saved over here. So let me just show you what that looked like. This is what the tool creation process looked like. It automatically populates this prompt. So it prompts the next agent and basically says, I need to create these tools. This is a tool I need. And then that agent gets to work and it immediately starts to do some research online, exactly what the API looks like, what the calls, what the parameters. It does all of this research for this API and it creates the tools. And it creates endpoints for those tools. And then it configures them as a tool set inside the Fabrix platform. I just have to click this Add Toolset button. Once that's done, go back to this agent where I asked for the tools to be created. I say, all right, the Dynatrace tools are now created. Please check and finish the job. So basically, it looks up the conversation history. It sees what the original request was. It refreshes its own context. It says, all right, well then, I just need to go and create an agent. And what it's doing is it's creating the persona, it's creating prompt templates for instructions, it's doing all of this stuff, and ultimately succeeds in creating the agent, and then lets you say, well, launch this Dynatrace metrics agent. If I click that, it does the same thing as it starts a new conversation. But once again, I've got that conversation saved over here, and you can see what that looked like. It basically says, here you go. And you can simply start talking to it. You can say, hi, I'd like to retrieve the CPU utilization metrics for all the hosts and blah, blah, blah. And it just runs the tools, gets the response, and provides you with the report. Basically, you were able to create a completely new agent along with the tools that it needs in order to accomplish its job with nothing but a simple prompt. And we think that's pretty cool. Let's look at agent observability. So we can think of it as happening on two levels. There's the global observability, which is how agents are monitored from a bird's eye view across the entire system. And this is kind of what we're seeing over here, a kind of an administrator's view, where you can see the various components of our infrastructure, what the tools are, what the agents are, and some key metrics about usage. But then we can drill down and see a little bit more detail when we go into our storyboard. It's still going to give us an overview type of system, but it gives us a better sense of how things are working together. And so we get a little bit more detail on tool sets and tools. We get a little bit more insight on users and usage. We get some insight into the prompt templates that are active. We can see at a glance some of the more recent conversations, so we can get a sense of the activity that's happening with our agents. And that gives us a kind of a monitor from a high perch, a sense of what's going on, and we can drill down into any of this information. Another thing that customers often want to keep track of is their costs, because this agentic stuff can get a little expensive. So this is an example of a dashboard that we use to keep track of our costs. We can see which users are consuming the most resources. We can see the tokens, the dollars. We can break it down by LLM or by different agent. We can keep track of it over time. Pretty much anything that you would expect from an observability platform. We treat AI as a first-class citizen at Fabrix.ai, so we're basically able to instrument and keep track of pretty much everything that's going on from a cost perspective and a usage perspective. The same goes, by the way, for platform costs. So, some of these models are all kind of like united together under a particular cloud model provider, whether it's AWS Bedrock or it's Azure. So we allow you to keep track of your spend at that level as well. something that a lot of people find pretty useful. So, there's a lot of these global observability features inside the platform, but let me switch over to some agent-specific observability. And I think that the one that's good for transition is the conversations, because as you can see here, this is very similar to the table we saw in the dashboard earlier. It's giving us a sense of all the recent interactions that our agents have been handling, but I can drill down now into an individual one. So if I choose, for example, this root cause analysis, and I click on it, I can see some information about it right away. I can see that it took 2 minutes and 39 seconds to run. I can see that it cost $1.61 to execute. I see the request. I can open up the individual tool calls, to, like, for example, here's I got a list of incidents, and here's the results of that call. And we can see what the model did in response to that. And we can actually look at it as a call flow sequence here, where I can actually visualize exactly how that all proceeded from the initial request to the model, making several tool calls, the tool calls ultimately resulting in a response, and so on and so forth. And that entire workflow actually produced an output, which I can visualize over here. This is showing me the rendered output. This is what the user would have seen as a result of that root cause analysis. I also get a sense of whether all the tools that were called, and I can audit those things and look for errors. I can look for any anomalies. I got access to all of the tool responses, as well as any documents that were created in the interim. This is a document that just part of our internal system that I'll talk to you about later, which creates conversation summaries. But basically, we have access to that. And if the user provided reviews, for example, they gave a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a star rating to a particular answer, to a particular conversation, we keep track of that here. Okay, and that takes me to the next aspect of per agent observability, which is going to be performance. So if I go here and I look at my agentic workflows, you can see under AI agent jobs, these are agents that were run automatically by the system. One of the agents that runs automatically is this agent evaluator. The agent evaluator takes any session that has been idle for some period of time and then runs an analysis to see how things went. And I'll show you what that looks like. It looks like this. In the end, it looks at all of the question that was asked, the various tools that were called, whether the tools returned results, whether the results were sufficient for the agent to produce a response, and whether or not the response looks like it satisfied the original request. The evaluator takes that entire interaction and evaluates it holistically and measures it on several dimensions. In this case, it measures it on helpfulness, accuracy, clarity, relevance, user satisfaction, and tool success rate. And based on those ratings, it'll give you a final rating. And we keep track of this over time to understand which agents are performing consistently well and which agents are experiencing a lot of trouble. And because we've got it broken down by these different dimensions, we're able to zero in on exactly what's working well and that's what's working not so well. But in addition, the evaluator is keeping track of lessons learned. So we're trying to inject into the loop, into the agent lifecycle, an evaluation step that allows us to figure out exactly what we could do to make the agents perform better over time. So you can see this is a really, really important part of how to make agents work well over the long term, and how to track things like drift and see if an agent's performance is declining over time. Okay, so that's a really quick tour of observability. And this also concludes our whirlwind tour of the Fabrix.ai agentic platform. Hope you enjoyed. And if you want more details, please do reach out. We'd be happy to answer questions and show you so much more that we didn't have time to show you during this demo.
Raju, we know that data fragmentation and model orchestration are major bottlenecks. How does your data fabric and the MCP server solve that?
Absolutely, Bob. So the data fabric, essentially it's an AI programmable fabric, where you can dynamically create new data, add new data sources, ingest new data, or enrich the data, or reroute the data. So the data fabric allows that data can be in our platform, or it can pull the data from any of IT systems, networks, infrastructure elements dynamically. And the data fabrics can be configured by humans or even by AI. We made it AI-powered fabric so that all these tools can be dynamically added. So you don't have to go and install an MCP server, test it and use it. You're dynamically adding more tools over one MCP server. And those tools can be used by our AI fabric or any external agentic fab systems.
So can I think of this as really the control layer for distributed AI environments, so that way companies can build better interoperability between their different models and the different data sources?
That's absolutely one of the such use cases, that interoperability. It's a more dynamic and flexible, where you don't have to figure out how do I get the data here.
Yeah.
Is there data already here? So it allows you to build agents with better context and better data and better insights, and much more rapidly than what would normally take without such platform.
Yeah, well, I especially like the interoperability piece, because it's always been proven over time. Interoperable solutions drive usage, right? And
Absolutely.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Raju, I wanted to ask you if we could talk a little bit more about the ecosystem. Something like the automation fabric in particular clearly is going to rely on partnerships and integrations. So I'm wondering if you could talk about how you're collaborating with cloud, data, and networking vendors to make this scalable.
Absolutely, Bob. So the automation fabric, which is the key part of our platform, it allows us to interoperate with other partners, other agents. So we interoperate with other agents through A2A, so that we can do the work handoff to other agents. So we have built a multi-agent orchestrator as part of the solution. And we proudly work with a lot of partners like Cisco and Splunk. We enable, and our automation enables service mapping and service dependency on top of Splunk. And we also do the full root cause analysis with network-centric, security-centric use cases. And we work with IBM on digital SRE and root cause analysis, solving a lot of their customer problems with Agentic AI. And we also work with cloud providers like AWS and AI leaders like NVIDIA to further our solution and spread this message that we want to be interoperable and open, working with the different solutions.
Yeah, what I like about what you're doing here is you've built an open and interoperable solution that works into the fabric of IT versus forcing yet another tool on the operations team, right? We always talk about this whole concept of swivel chair management, because of all these different single panes of glass, but you're actually trying to work with them instead of replacing them or sitting alongside them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, hey, I want to thank you guys for a great tour under the hood of Fabrix.ai. I think we really saw how Fabrix.ai delivers intelligence in the guardrails, how the data fabric and MCP server unify the models and data, and really how the automation fabric is helping to operationalize it across all the different ecosystems. So Raju, Rached, thank you for the demos and the insights, and Zeus, as always, great analysis. Up next, we're going to explore how customers are putting this into action with real-world agentic use cases and the measurable business outcomes that they're seeing. So stay tuned. That conversation is coming right up.